Hey everybody, I got another exciting episode for you today. I was really hyped when this woman agreed very enthusiastically. Actually, I was a little taken aback. I was like, oh wow, because we hadn't talked before. We say what's up here and now, here and there on Instagram and social media. We have some mutuals. I've had the pleasure to work with some of her friends in the film industry back in Los Angeles when I was there. Um, Mild spoiler because I was going to ask her this, but she's calling in from Nolens. I hope I said that right. Um, and that's really exciting. She's done a lot in the film space. I can't net all of it out for you, so we're just gonna go with that like one by one. She's just gonna take us through her journey in a little bit. But I really think that her story and her expertise, as it comes to recruitment and placing people, and her experience as a production assistant, has how she's risen in the ranks. I think will really be a major blessing to a lot of you listeners. I think she's going to have a lot of insight for you. After this, I encourage you all to follow her on social media and get involved with her programs. Get connected, however, because I really think she can contribute in some way to your journey if you think it's a good fit. So, with no further ado, let's get more into her story. I just want you guys to help me welcome Miss Stevee-Rayne Warren. Stevie, welcome.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I'm gonna have to bring you with me to some of my speaking engagements.
Hey,
Um,
with me.
yes, thank you again for having me. Seriously.
You're welcome. Thank you for saying yes. Quickly, did I say that or is it Stevie Rain? Do you prefer that or is Stevie okay?
It either or. But yes, Stevee-Rayne, you did say it right.
Sweet. Okay. Well, let's jump in. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I told everyone you're from New Orleans, Louisiana. Can you also talk about your journey into Novak and just a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm actually from and based in Baton Rouge, which is an hour out of New Orleans, but I do
That's great.
work heavily in New Orleans. Because I commute back and forth from Baton Rouge to New Orleans pretty frequently.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I right now I wear a few different hats, but my main, I guess you would say, day job is I'm a program manager for Novak, which is New Orleans Video Access Center. And Novak is a filmmaking resource nonprofit based in Louisiana. Been around since 1972, so this is our 50th anniversary year this year. Um,
Hey.
we're turning up October 21st if you're in town in New Orleans. So we're gonna have like a really big party celebration further in the year. But yeah, I mean, I started out or how I got involved with Novak. So I went to school in Baton Rouge. I went to Southern University, which is a historically Black college here in Louisiana.
Love it.
And when I was in like middle school, high school, the state of Louisiana, we received a tax incentive was mandated for filmmaking here. So we started to get a bit of a peak in like production work and all of that. So this was around the time like Twilight Breaking Dawn, Pitch Perfect, like all of these films were actually filmed like
Wow.
in Louisiana. So around this time, they had just kind of built this big studio here. Celtic Studios is one of the larger studios here in Louisiana, and I had to pass it every day to go to school because I was living at home. Going to I was it was my sophomore year in college because I had actually transferred from another school that was like in the bayou in Thibodeau. But, but I had transferred and I started at Southern, but I had to pass up the studio every day. And I had always been like very curious about production work, but I just didn't know how to get in. I didn't know anybody in the industry. And I just, quite frankly, didn't know that it was even like an option for me because it seemed like one of those things where it's like you kind of had to be like born into it or something like that. Like that was my
Right.
assumption. Um, so I would pass up the studio every day. And I like went online and I saw that they had like a security job opening. So I was like, well, maybe if I could get on the studio
Right.
and like get a little pinky toe in, like that would kind of lead to something. So I had no business. I did not have that to do to be applying for a security job, but I applied, I applied for a security job. I didn't get it, but the receptionist at the time at Celtic, um, she told me about Novak. She was like, I have some friends that I went to, LSU with that work in the industry, and they got in by going through like these trainings through Novak. And I was like, I had never heard of it. So she sent me like the link to their website. And then that night I kind of went down a rabbit hole, just like looking into like what all Novak offered. And at the time, they had funding from the city for workforce. So there was training available to Baton Rouge residents for free. And the day that I looked online, it was the very last course of the season,
Hmm.
and it was the deadline to apply. And it was it was a cinematography training, which again I didn't even know what a cinematographer was. But I was like, I wrote my little my what is it? What was it called? It wasn't necessarily a cover letter, but it was like a statement of purpose. Like, why do you want
Okay.
to take this training?
Yeah.
So I, researched what a cinematographer was, pretended like I wanted to be a DP, and was just like, I'm fine.
Finesse
Like
that thing.
I wouldn't advise this, but I mean, you kind of have to sometimes. But so I applied for the training. I got into the training, and
You
uh,
had to finesse the
I,
statement.
exactly, yes. I had to finesse the statement in the application, but I ended up getting into the class. And to this day, I have like an immense appreciation and admiration for DPs or anyone who works in the camera department, just
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
knowledge that I gained from that training. But even after I had taken it, I was like, this isn't really still what I want to do, but it's dope, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And while in college, I had started to work in public health. So at that time, I was in school, I had a work study, and I was working part time as in like volunteer kind of research and all of those things with the state of Louisiana. And we used to work with a lot of nonprofits. So I kind of had an understanding of like funding cycles and how nonprofit hiring and all of that, how that works. So I
Hmm.
knew that in Baton Rouge, that office had just opened like a year prior, and it was just one staff member in Baton Rouge. So I figured they probably would get funding eventually for an assistant, an intern, or something like that. So the program manager at the time, like after the training, I was like, look, I'm in school. If you need, an intern, please let me know. And I sent her my resume and just kind of would check in with her periodically. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, I ended up getting hired as an intern for Novak.
Yeah.
And my role as an intern, because we also at Novak, we're a nonprofit, but we also have a creative services like kind of programming where we do work with other nonprofits or initiatives to produce content for them. Gotcha. Um, so yeah, I had gotten hired as an intern for Novak, and essentially I was like the in-house production assistant, because one of our, I guess, services, our pillars, is creative services for independent filmmakers, but then we also act as a production company for other nonprofits or initiatives that are centered around, social issues or what have you. So whenever we had been outsourced by someone else to produce something, film something, I was the in-house PA. And um, yeah, that role kind of, it opened my eyes to a lot of different things because on smaller projects, you tend to wear many hats. So I was getting into sound and recording
Mhm.
and working with the field producers when they were having to interview people and all of that. So I got to see a lot of different aspects that I don't think you necessarily get to see if you're working like on a big budget project, because it's pretty, regimented and you're in whatever department you're in. So I think having that kind of entry point was really, I don't know, it really informed, how I wanted to kind of continue in production. And then also now when I'm doing career consultations or what have you, just explaining like the different types of productions to people and what their experiences would be. But I started to work with our membership, and the membership benefits, and then that grew to me becoming a program coordinator. So I was the membership
Mhm.
coordinator for about a year. Um, and then I want to say in 2016, maybe 2016 or 17, our program manager in New Orleans, she actually transitioned out to go and work on a film out of the country. And
Wow.
again, we're a small nonprofit. So our executive director at the time, kind of have made the decision to um, delegate, some of her programs to other members within the staff instead of like hiring someone else and onboarding them, because we just, I guess, didn't have the capacity to do that. And at the time, we had just kind of gotten a relationship with HBO, where we acted
Wow.
as a liaison and consultant for. It started off as, and let me double back. So that particular partnership came about because we, in Louisiana, a big part of like the economic development or economic, rebuilding was trying to rebuild the workforce after Hurricane Katrina. And
Mhm.
part of that was the film industry. So we had, a lot of training and in organizing around workforce and building the workforce within the film industry. And we had worked with Cinemax show at the time. So this is a few years ago if it was Cinemax, but there was a Cinemax show that filmed in New Orleans, Query, and we helped facilitate a multi-department internship with that production. And we had gotten like a really good just feedback from that experience. And one of the producers then connected us with the corporate social responsibility team at HBO, because
Gotcha.
they were wanting to like marry CSR work and workforce work, but they just didn't know how they could do that. So they had us. They reached out. They were like, "We want to work with you all again. We want y'all to come and consult for us for a show, but in Miami." And we were like, "Okay,
Right?
okay, we can." Right. So that was actually my first. Um, my first introduction into like recruitment and that part of
Mhm.
working in the industry. So my role, as an intern prior to me becoming the coordinator, was I did like the first review of resumes for that program. So
Wow.
and that ended up being Ballers, season 1 of
Okay.
Ballers, when they filmed in Miami. So we worked with Ballers, and then we were contracted with HBO to consult with whatever, domestic production, wanted to engage with the program, wanted to bring on new and local talent. So the way that I always explain it is that I'm based in Louisiana. My work here is always local, but like when I'm being outsourced and consulting for other like studios or networks, I go where the productions go, but it's always community driven. So if a show is in Miami, I'm looking for Miami based people. If it's in
Right.
Atlanta, same thing. If it's in
Right.
LA, same thing. Um so that grew into a bigger program, and then I started to manage the HBO program um in my coordinator position, and then I eventually was promoted to a manager position. So it's so I'm simultaneously kind of wearing two hats. So I'm matching our trainees and our members to job opportunities here, no matter the studio, no matter if it's non-union. It's mission aligned for us to get people in Louisiana connected to opportunities within the film industry, right? But then there's this
Yep.
outside program for HBO that is national, where I'm essentially doing the same work, but I was working virtually before COVID. So I was doing that
Okay.
still, in Louisiana. I would travel to maybe like LA, New York, and Atlanta once or twice a year. But other than that, I was, here in Louisiana for the majority of the year.
Okay.
Um, so that program, it just, it continued to grow. And then all of the mergers started to happen. The
Uh-huh.
AT&T Warner Media merger. So then I started to get assigned to Warner Brothers Productions. And that's when I started to tap into, because prior to that, I had only worked with episodic television. Like that was it. It was Curb
Mm-hmm.
Your Enthusiasm, Silicon Valley, Insecure, and then on the East Coast it was Crashing and Girls, and I had done Ballers, but that was kind of the bread and butter of HBO at the time. So it was like, that was all I had done. And then when Warner Brothers came into play, I started to get assignments in Atlanta, because they had legacies and originals there at the
Right.
time. Um, and then I later started to get assigned to more like feature films with Warner Brothers when they came into play. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. I'm working, like still locally, with projects from wherever, Apple, Netflix here in Louisiana. If they're wanting to engage with, a nonprofit that's training people and connecting people to work. And then I'm still working with now Warner Bros. Discovery. It's not Warner Media anymore, but now
Oh
Warner
wow.
Bros. Discovery. So that's everything from HBO Max to, Turner Legacy, which is TNT, TBS, True TV, and now Discovery. So that's, Nat Geo and Food Network and all of these, different divisions. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. And that's kind of the connection to, my role at Novak, and how it's also connected to the work that I do nationally as well. That was another thing I forgot to mention. So when I'm recruiting outside of Louisiana and we're looking for quote unquote like sourcing partners, or and when I say sourcing, I mean crew, or
Mm-hmm.
talent for production opportunities. We work primarily with other nonprofits, and a lot of that has to do with nonprofits, by nature tend to serve people from underserved,
Right.
communities,
That's
or
right.
people from different backgrounds. And then there's also the aspect of, physical production is one of the education to work in physical production. So when we stray more towards nonprofits rather than actual schools, because film schools, or major universities or what have you, if we make that the requirement, that places another barrier for people.
Right.
So because that's, it's a privilege to be able to go to college. Some people don't want to go to college and accrue
That's right.
debt and all of that. So it's like, so yeah, we work with nonprofits, and we started with some of the nonprofits that the studio was already working with on the CSR side. So if it was an organization that they were donating to, we were like, well, let's see if there are folks that would be interested in working in production. Some of them are, media centered, like they serve people who want to tell stories, but some of them are more so on the workforce side. So if we're working with an organization that serves individuals who are formerly incarcerated, but they have a training program in electrician work or carpentry.
Yeah.
Like those are things you could do on a production, right?
Absolutely.
So like finding those connection points and identifying skills and like former jobs that could transfer into production work. That's, you didn't ask it, but that's like my favorite thing. Like my favorite thing about my job. It really, really is, because like I said, this is I guess in the workforce space, we call production work low barrier, high wage. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
again, you don't need formal education. Um, if you choose to go like the union route, like that's your best bet, right? If you want to eventually be in, I guess, a high powered craft position or something like that, you would go, the union route or what have you. So, um, helping people fill that knowledge gap of like what they can do and what opportunities could be afforded to them is
Mhm.
like I said, one of my favorite
Mhm.
things about my job. Yeah.
Wow. That's okay. That's really cool. Here, could I have you do something? I thought I had a third one real quick. Could you
Hmm.
rapidly define ED? You mentioned that earlier, and CSR for those who may not be aware.
Gotcha. So ED is executive director. That's basically my boss. And for most nonprofits, that's the senior position with a nonprofit, the executive director. So they manage all of the program managers.
Nice.
And then CSR is corporate social responsibility. That's a division. Even with companies that aren't production companies. They'll have a corporate social responsibility division. And like I said, typically CSR really is over philanthropic efforts, making sure that companies that are, if they take money from, certain environments or certain groups, they're wanting
Right.
to make sure that
Right.
they're putting back funds and resources into, communities or what have you. So
Nice.
that's what the programs that I manage typically fall under CSR or community engagement.
Okay, that's cool. Wow, you just got my mind buzzing. There's just a lot of um structural things
Yeah.
going on here. Like, whoo,
Yeah, and when someone like reaches out to me and I love specificity. Like I love when somebody said, I really want to work on this show. I really want to work with this person. But I'm always like, okay, there's like a process with the programs that I
yeah.
that I manage. It's very like it's not by chance. It's very thought out. Like I work heavily in the development stages of
Nice.
how we're going to recruit, how we're going to maintain and make sure that we have retention within these spaces and people aren't just coming in and out, becoming a PA and then leaving. Like there are like steps and I feel bad sometimes where it's like when I can't just tell somebody, okay, yeah, boom, I'll get you hired on the show. But it's like, well, if you really want to succeed and be able to, like I said, like retain positions and things like that, you want to be able to get training and you want to be able to set yourself up for success. So yeah, there are definitely like it's a lot of structure and steps to my process when I'm managing programs.
That's really cool. Another thing I thought might be helpful because I'm trying to hold on, and I think a lot of people they're just this is just oh this is going to be really good. Can you, for those who never really stopped to think about it and aren't in that space, would you mind
Hmm.
rapidly defining the non-for-profit space and then
Hmm.
maybe recap or elaborate briefly on why you think it's unique in the
Hmm.
film space? I don't hear people, maybe I just lived under a rock, but this is my
Hmm.
first time seeing nonprofit and film production
Hmm.
coming
Hmm.
together. It could be for other people.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if I can rapidly explain the nonprofit space, but I can say like
Take your time.
specifically. I can say specifically with Novak, right?
Yeah.
We our programming is it's built on funding. So we have to write grants. We have to write grant proposals throughout the year. We have to keep up when application cycles are throughout the year. And a lot of our funding is like city or state funded. And there are a lot of grants, and this is across the board, like in whatever city or state or what have you. There are grants that are specific to workforce, so building the workforce within a certain area. There are grants that are specific to economic development,
Hmm.
so that can tie into workforce. There are grants that are specific to the cultural economy, so um, building capacity and building resources for people who work in the arts. So figuring out, and that's part of the executive director's job is, when they're in development, figuring out what type of grants can we take advantage of and use the best to serve our community. So the money that comes from grants typically go to, and a lot of the grant money is how our training opportunities are free to residents, right? So we are able to
Wow,
um
free.
yeah, so yeah, our workforce trainings are always free.
Woo!
So
Beautiful.
a lot of the funding, the salary of the instructor that goes to that, the administrative time that goes into like my work, our other local, our workforce managers,
Mm-hmm.
time and effort to be able to coordinate and all of those things. Some of it goes to that. And then again, for these trainings to be free, um, we are able to get funding, through, like I said, city programs and all of that. And then a step further, which is hard to get sometimes, but if you get enough funding, you can also get programs that are stipend. So if
Stipend,
we're
okay.
bringing people in for 2 weeks of training and they have to either take off or take a break from work, they could get paid for that, for training. So that's kind of how that space works. And then other kind of like media centered nonprofits across the country, whether it be like Ghetto Film School in New York or Manifest Works in LA. There are similar programs to Novak that are in other places. And their process kind of works the same, where they get city, state, or federal funding
Okay.
to support workforce, our community members.
Wow.
And then what was the second one? The second question you had?
Oh, and I
I'm
think,
sorry.
how does, let me see,
Oh,
the
the
non
nonprofit and film
come
kind of
together?
kind come together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and that's, it seems to be like that's not something that's public knowledge, even for people who are like in the thick of it, like yourself, who like
Yeah.
work in production. So what typically happens, so again, like I said, I work typically with the corporate social responsibility and the community engagement divisions within studios. They are usually the ones who are connected to nonprofits or
Okay.
community organizations or community initiatives to be able to connect productions with those types of programming.
Hmm.
So this is a studio function, right? This is that's literally their job, to be able to connect with people who have boots on the ground, who are trying to connect people to opportunities. So most studios have a CSR division, especially now.
Okay.
Um, and you're seeing a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion divisions as well that are coming up. And some of them, they serve as their own kind of entity, own division. Some fall under like the HR function,
Hmm.
but that's another thing as well, where the studio will partner with a nonprofit to set up some type of pipeline to get crew members in.
Wow. And then recap for me again. You can take your time. Tell us
Uh-huh.
again what your favorite part of your job is.
Yes. My favorite part of my job is, again, closing that knowledge gap for people.
Okay.
Somebody who, I don't know, like somebody who maybe worked in retail. They loved fashion their whole life. They also love television, but they know they don't want to be a director. They don't want to be an actor. They don't want to be a producer, but they don't know that they could actually work in film and work in the place that they're interested in, which is fashion, clothing, styling, and all of that. So whenever I'm having like a career consultation with someone, or I'm just explaining the different opportunities, and that thing, it clicks, and they're
Yeah.
like, wait, I could do that. And then when they actually get that first paid internship, PA position, what have you, and they're on their way, that is my favorite, from that start to kind of
Yeah.
realization of the potential there. Favorite thing, without a doubt. Favorite thing.
That is cool.
Yeah.
You're marrying that, like in your example of the retail, like your love of fashion or whatever, with maybe your curiosity or nerddom for the film community, and you're finding a way to, like, well, here, let's find a way to marry those two things together. Or like your example with the electrician.
Yeah,
earlier that will
absolutely.
work in a different capacity. But you and I definitely know, in those listening in film, no, you
Yeah,
need, is that G&E? I hope I'm remembering my
yeah, absolutely. Grip and
acronym.
electric. Grip and electric. And then people who maybe worked in construction, they can work in
Yep.
scenic work. I know a lot of visual artists that, eventually they'll get into art department. People who have a background in accounting can be a production accountant. Like, it's like so many, I did a it was like an Instagram, like the question thing on
Yeah, yeah.
Instagram. And I just asked people to like give me a profession, give me a job, and I'll tell you what job in production, you could do that type of work. It was really fun. I love doing it. So I might have to do that again one day. Because people were
Yeah,
like
what
very surprised.
you think of a like two or three others that came to mind, because it's a fun game because it's creating possibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one person, they caught me. They tried to catch me off guard. They were like, had, they're like their backgrounds in like EMT work. I was like, well, you could be a set medic.
Yeah.
Like, somebody had asked about they had been a teacher, like, but they were interested in film, and I was like, well, you could be a studio teacher. Like, they need teachers on set. But also too, if you're a teacher, you probably have a lot of patience. You're
Right.
probably organized if you're a good teacher. So you might do well in the AD department. You know what I mean? So, or
Mm.
you might do well if you have a lot of administrative skills. You might do well in the production office. So, what else? There was a lot of them that it
You
definitely those skills can transfer over.
know, you got me going, because I remember I once met Johnny Greens on Insecure. So if you like gardening and things like
Yes.
that, you can bring in the
Mhm.
plants, and like they have whole sections of like, we need this plant for Issa's
Mhm.
apartment, and Molly has this plant, and
Mhm.
so he's got Johnny had to water them, he had to wheel them in, he
Yes.
had to get them from different, I don't know if greenhouses is the right terminology I'm using, or
Like nurseries and
nurseries. There,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the word. Or also, he also had a background in his uncle with what was it? Maybe a veterinary background or something with animals. And so some shows, as you know, you might have pets, or an episode will have
Yeah.
animals, or you're wrangling animal. You might have that background with animals or something.
Mhm.
Or wow, yeah, my mind just that's great that you did. You should do that again.
Yeah, it was fun. I think I'm gonna do it again. And people like really, really engaged. And yeah.
That's cool. So yeah, but you said a lot. Let's take a quick break from that for just a
Mhm.
second. Can you remind me again, remind the listeners what you did go to school for?
Gotcha. Yeah, I went to school originally for English and rhetoric. But then I graduated with a literature degree, English literature, and a minor in liberal arts. So I didn't go to film school, but I did
Okay.
learn a lot, in the School of Humanities that I
Right.
definitely am able to use with my role now. But yeah, I went
Nice.
to school for English.
So what did you okay? Did you have any favorite shows or films growing up? And then when did you fall in love with film production later?
Gotcha. I watched a lot of TV growing up. So yes, but like my earliest, it's crazy. My earliest memory of like, I guess, television is actually soap operas
Okay.
because my mom was a beautician most of my life, but all of my childhood. So when I would come home from school, 4 or 5 o'clock, Bold and the Beautiful, Young and the Restless, right?
Hmm.
So I loved the. I probably didn't have any business watching those shows, but I started watching soap operas, in my mom's salon. And then, like at a very young age, I loved what Dragon Tales and
Oh yeah,
Zoom and
PBS
uh,
Kids. Yeah.
PBS. And then as I got older, um, I was a Disney kid. I loved That So Raven, Proud Family,
Hmm.
even Steven Maguire. I really lean more towards television even then and still now. But like for films, I loved what movies did I love? I love 17 Again, Hardball. Yeah, that movie, whew, that had me in a chokehold. What else? I love like all the Disney movies that was like coming out like around that time. The Halloween Town, Xenon.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, I loved Princess Diaries. That was my movie. Princess Diaries and Parent Trap. I love those two. But yeah. And then when I like fell in love with film, so the first movie I ever saw in the theaters was Big Mama's House.
Okay.
And I went to we saw it like as a family, like my immediate family, and then like 15 of my cousins.
Oh
So
wow.
um just being able to like experience that, like having that collective experience like with your family, we
Yeah.
were like laughing really. And then like, my mom's generation and my older cousins that were there, they knew who, like they were familiar with Martin. They watched Martin as young adults, so they knew,
Hmm.
who he was, and Neil Long as well. I
Yeah.
grew to eventually know who he was, but I didn't necessarily grow up on Martin.
Right.
um
Sure.
but yeah, and then like talking about the movie afterwards, because I might have been maybe 5, 6. I was little.
Okay.
So that was probably definitely my love for like going to the movies, because I love going to the movies. Like I go to the movies alone. Like that is my thing.
It's
Um,
great.
yeah,
I love it.
I love going to the movies like with my daughter, but my love for like films and going to the movies definitely started there. And I think a lot of it had to do with because it was that kind of familial bond that we were able to have, that
Yeah.
kicked it off. And like even now, like I love talking about TV shows with my mom or my sister, or so yeah. But yeah, I watched a lot of TV, and that is actually what led to me going to school for English, because I think to offset all the TV I was watching, my mom was like making me read books.
I knew you were gonna
So,
say that. My mom did the
so
same thing.
yeah, so I was, always reading, and then of course, you become in love with storytelling as a whole, and filmmaking, and storytelling. So it starts with the paper, starts on the paper.
It always starts on the
So
page.
I always starts on the paper. But yeah, I would say that's probably when I started to have a love for film.
Did you have what were some of your favorite books growing up?
Ooh, so my favorite book when I was little, or when I was a kid, was A Lesson Before Dying, by Ernest Gaines. And I mean, that was like my reread book, like the book that I would probably read every summer,
Hmm.
because it just, ooh, it pulls at your heartstrings, but it's just such a good story. And then like I grew up, my dad was incarcerated when I was younger, so just that kind of story of someone in prison and all of that, it just really spoke to me.
Hmm.
So A Lesson Before Dying was definitely my favorite book. And then once I started to get older, like middle school, I love middle and high school. I love anything Bell Hooks. Um, and what else? But yeah, when I think about like favorite book as a kid, A Lesson Before Dying, without a doubt. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, you're right. It starts on the page. Um, I loved a lot of like sci-fi and fantasy coming up
Ooh,
myself,
okay.
and like that later got me into like comics and things. I still really
I was
enjoy comic
about
books.
to ask did you get into comics. I was just about to ask
You were,
that.
yeah, yeah, and
I
I
wasn't
would just say again.
I wasn't into it, but whenever people talk about their love
Yeah,
for
yeah.
comics, I'm always like enthralled in it, because I'm like, oh, I love that, people are able to like kind of love this thing, and you know.
Yeah, yeah. And like I was just talking to a friend before we got on about like a new film coming out and like production stills and things like that. And just, it was crazy to just be able to like you can make up the story in your head if it's just a novel. And it's like, wow, just the
Mhm.
words can create, introduce me to different people, take me to different worlds, make me feel different things. Combined with then, if you read, picture books or graphic novels, just the artistry that's married to I guess in a film sense, it might feel like storyboards or something, but like
Cool.
just the visuals being married to the words and the emotion, and then because I wanted to be a novelist at first. I still, you know, self-published a book with my dad and still have other like book ideas and things, but that was like what got me into like screenwriting because that's
Gotcha.
kind of like where I'm at. Screenwriting is always what I've loved. I love the other aspects and things as well, but just those portals, you know, depending on where you start, they just keep, you know, cartoons growing up. For some people, it's
Mhm.
video games, and it's just, I think you said earlier that the communal storytelling experience is just is unmatched, and I love hearing different people's stories of how they got started.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have perhaps maybe and this one because I'm thinking about it myself now. You don't have a favorite black movie, do you? Or did you already list it?
Um, Probably, I'm trying to think. My favorite black movie is Brown Sugar, but I wasn't watching it when I was a kid. But that is my jam. I That is my comfort film. I love a good. First of all,
Yeah.
I'm a romance type. Like that's my lane right there. But also, I love a good coming of age. I love a good star-crossed lovers. Like I love those type of stories. And Queen Latifah, like, come on, she was
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
Sanaa was, she had a role. After Love and Basketball, it was like she was in everything. But
Right.
Brown Sugar is definitely my favorite, like black film. You would say,
That is
yeah,
that is so awesome. That's one of my favorite movies. Like I do love that coming of age aspect. I love that Sanaa Lathan is a writer. Um,
yes,
I love that whole, you know, she's writing her memoir and the theme is music. When did you first fall in love with hip hop? And she's
right.
interviewing musical
All these
figures, I think,
icons, yeah.
and I just, you know, and just her growing up with Tay Diggs and the flashbacks and the comedy, you know, is is great as well. And you know, when they like bum rush, what is it, Nicole R. Parker in the middle of the movie, and just
Oh my god, a divorce.
we're to celebrate my divorce.
I love that. And when she was like, he said my food was delicious and nutritious.
I do.
Those two,
Most Def just being a dork the whole time, and
yeah.
just what did he call it? Not Scrooge. He called him the Grinch or something. You gonna bring hip hop to the Little Who's?
Yeah.
Gosh, I love that movie. I think Love and Basketball is awesome too. No, it is, but I don't know what it is. It's just Brown Sugar is it for me as well.
Yeah, same here, same here. But
That's cool. Okay, here, let's go back to film experience. Do you have perhaps a memory from your days as a production assistant that really stood out, like
mhm,
lesson wise, and maybe it even informed your career today?
mhm. So thinking about one of my first set PA experiences, I worked on a feature film that shot in Baton Rouge called Beautifully Broken. And this might have been maybe my second or third day. I was in the um the line for lunch. And a man like standing behind me, he asked me my name, and he asked me, what do I want to do in production eventually. He told me his name, and we just kind of sparked off a conversation. And he gave me his like email address. And it was a very just kind of natural conversation. But I went into it, like we spoke in a very, just like I said, natural manner, and it was just a very organic conversation. Um, and I was actually having like a tough day, but I kind of was like, well, let me just talk to him or whatever. And then I
Mhm.
eventually found out he was the executive producer.
Wow.
So I think the whole thing of like, you never know who you're talking with, and you kind of always want to be, I guess, transparent about your goals in this industry, the things that you want to do. Like that will take you further than your skill or your experience. Sometimes it's, your transparency and the way you communicate the stories that you want to tell or the things that you want to do. And on the recruiting and hiring side, I'm always looking for that when I'm talking to young people, or people wanting to enter this industry, because sometimes I'll get a request for something so specific, and it's like, if I don't have somebody in my candidate pool that doesn't match, what this production person is looking for, because
Sure.
somebody communicate that with me,
Hmm.
it makes my job harder as a recruiter. So I think because when I started off as a PA and I just had that kind of natural conversation with that person, and I guess what you would consider friendly. I mean, I'm not like an introvert, but you know what I mean. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I try to always be respectful and polite, for the most part. I don't care about being liked, but I will be respectful to, everyone.
Mhm.
um and I think that translated with him, and to this day we're still, in communication with each other. But like I said, that one conversation, it definitely like informed like the way that when I talk and I recruit, for production opportunities. I've had people tell me down to the producer, the production, the costume designer that they want to work with. And I think some people, there's a negative connotation with that, because it's like, what, are you like fangirling, fanboiling, or do you really want to
Okay.
like do this? But for me, I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way. I think that's I don't know, if somebody like just kind of innately feels like they want to work with a certain person, or they want to work on a certain type of project. Like I said, that's easier for me as a recruiter, because like to this day I have a man who I recruited 4 years ago. And he worked on Lucifer in LA, but
Hmm.
he loves Batman. And
Nice.
I I don't I if I don't get him on something Batman related, or I'm done with this job, I'm a failure, because he's expressed to me several times like he wants to work on something that has to do with Batman. So it's like and those things like that stick out. Like those
Yeah.
type of people that top of mind for me. Like, and if I get a request for something Batman related, he's the first person I'm gonna reach out to, because you know I've had people tell me like they really want to work with Issa Rae, and then they were able to work with Issa Rae. They were able. I did all 5 seasons of Insecure, and then I did Rap Shit as well in Miami. And one of the individuals that worked on Rap Shit, they specifically said that they admired Issa Rae and they wanted to
Hmm.
work on the production that she had produced and developed. And I remembered that it stuck out. I remembered it. I took note of it, and it was maybe like 6 months later I reached out to her. So yeah. I don't even. Did I answer your question? I might
I'm
have.
pretty sorry. I got so drawn into what you were saying. I'm pretty sure you did. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
so
this started off
that's
talking about
where as
production
a
assistants.
PA,
Yeah.
exactly, in the line with the guy who turned out to be the executive producer. Yeah, okay, so yeah.
Production assistants, take note. You never know who you're talking with, talking to. Um, be specific. Stevie mentioned that even prior to this question, how she loves specificity, and I picked up on that in our industry as well. Specificity, you can't be too specific. Now rein it in. Some of the fangirl, fanboy, I get that, but specificity does help people like Stevie or people in power take note of you, remember what it is you're interested in, and it helps
Yeah,
them help you, you
absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. There's kind of like a quiet confidence that comes with that as well, because it's like, oh, you know what you like, what genres it is that you want to work in,
Hmm.
types, like I said, what type of stories it is you want to be a part of or want to tell. Like there's, like I said, like a kind of quiet confidence, that at least that's what I kind of take that as, when I'm speaking with people.
Nice. And you know what, to be clear, this is people who have entered the program who are able to make these requests, or if not requests, state these goals of theirs to you. Am I hearing that correctly? I don't want anyone listening to be like, oh, just become best friends with Stevie on
Right.
Instagram, and that's it. No, there's a protocol, right? They become students of the program,
Right,
or
exactly. Yeah, these type of conversations typically happen in either the interview process, or sometimes I adopted this thing called state interviews that they used to do when I worked for the state, which is basically a conversation um about, where it's like a check-in basically. They just call them stay
Okay.
interviews. But sometimes people don't know what it is they want to do until after they do it. So I've had people like they're working like on an unscripted show and they're like, I think I want to work on a feature film after this. So like I'll learn it within like a stay interview. But yes, typically these type of conversations when people are telling me, the genres that they want to work in or the type of productions that they want to work in, this is in the interview process. So they've already been um recruited. They've gone through some type of internal training that we host, and then they're essentially in the candidate pool for um, a time and period. So yeah, this isn't just like not unsolicited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to work with whoever, but these are folks that have, like I said, gone through um, the steps to be able to kind of go through like the interview process.
That's cool. Do you have a preference between indie projects and mainstream? And if so, why or why not?
Um, I would say for personally, I probably prefer independent projects. I think it's kind of hard to say. So when I'm thinking about someone who's maybe like brand new to the industry, I try, my New Orleans in particular has a very active independent film community. So whenever I can get like somebody who's brand new to the production world in on an opportunity, I prefer to try to get them on an independent project because like we had mentioned earlier, when it's a smaller project, you have more opportunity to do and learn, different
Mhm.
things. Also too, there's this kind of um a more insular like sense of community when it's a smaller, non studio project that
Right, right, right.
it's really beautiful to experience. But then
Yeah.
whenever they're as far as like opportunity goes, if their goal is to work in the tier one space, work on studio feature film television series, they have to start somewhere, so they have to get on a show that's in that space at some point. Also to a lot some I remember when I worked when I recruited for Joker, and they filmed in Newark, New Jersey.
Wow. Wow.
um that group, and they had like a awesome AD team who they worked with us, and they were like, they don't even need to have experience. They hosted, their own like internal, the AD team and the location managers hosted like a PA boot camp for a weekend. And anybody that I had recruited, if they did well, they brought them on like as day players, and then some of them got hired on as like core PAs. But I say that to say, a lot of those folks, again, that was their first production job. They didn't have any trouble finding work after that because Joker was on their resume. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like, so I
Hey.
think, yeah, I don't know if I would say I have a favorite. I would say that it depends on the individuals that I'm recruiting, and their situation and their ideal trajectory. Because some people come to me, their goal is to be an independent filmmaker. They don't want to go that route. So I try my best to get them connected to independent projects to where they can meet, you know, local directors and producers and, people who would come to them with open arms to be able to mentor them in those things. But if you're someone, you want to be an AD, you want to eventually join a DGA, you want to work on, union productions, then yeah, I will try to get you a paid internship or PA opportunity on a studio position. So like I said, it depends on the person.
Nice. And you know what? For those who don't know, could you briefly define the DGA?
Sorry. Okay, so some it's for like layman's terms. Like if you ever see a like behind the scenes or a illustration of
Yeah.
Action, cut, all of that. That's typically the AD and not the actual
That's
director doing
right.
that. Best way to I explain it is that the AD team, they help facilitate the creative. So whatever has been
Yeah.
written on paper, whatever the producers and production office and all of them have gotten together, have coordinated and liaised, and gotten all of that together, the AD team, they are in charge of the scheduling, in charge of the production reports every day, making sure that what was supposed to be filmed was filmed, when it was supposed to be filmed, where it was supposed to be filmed, where everyone is where they need to be. So they are the regulators, right? They are making sure that everything is being done on time because time is money. Um, and a lot of money
Yeah.
goes into making
Yes.
films and television.
Yes.
So if I could put it into one word, I would say the ADs are the regulators.
Gotcha. And that all comes under their Directors Guild
So,
of
yes,
America.
so
Yeah.
exactly. So DGA would they cover AD. So,
Hmm.
and then if you're looking at maybe like the trajectory of like an AD department, so there's the production assistant, the PA, that's the entry level position.
Hmm.
And then there's second ADs, second ADs, first ADs, and then directors are also under DGA,
Hmm.
and UPMs, unit production managers, are also under DGA.
Nice. I love how you went through that. You also just reminded me of your mom. You said she was a beautician, so she would have done HMU, right? Hair and makeup.
Yes, but funny you mentioned my mom, because I any opportunity to talk about my mom. She actually works in production now as a
What?
costume. Yeah, she's
That's
a costume.
fire.
Yes, yes. Um, and I can briefly kind of talk about that because I'm just so
Yeah.
proud. But
Go
so,
ahead.
like, my mom was a beautician for 25, 30 years. She started to get like carpal tunnel in her hand, so she wanted to like step away
Hmm.
um from doing hair. And oh yeah, so my mom, like in the 90s, she was like one of the people that could do sew-in. So, Black women, if you listen, like, she was
Hey.
the Baton Rouge kind of pioneer of like sew-in. So
Yo. Legend.
yes, so she went back to college when I was in high school for clothing and textiles because she always loved fashion. And then she immediately went and got her MBA after that as well. And then at that time, I started to intern for Novak, and there was an opportunity for a costume intern on Green Book that filmed in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. So
Yeah.
she was a costume intern for Green Book, which won the Oscar that following year.
Hmm.
And then she kind of started to go. She went back into hair. She did a lot of different. My mom is pretty eccentric, but she did a lot of other things. And then she kind of got back into costuming. And now she's working on a Disney project here in Louisiana as a costumer. So she's
Wow.
one of when I talk about people transitioning from another industry or another profession, like I'm talking like witnessing my mom firsthand do it, and do
Yeah.
it successfully. So um yeah, I'm always excited about those type of stories, just because we always like, oh yeah, we want to bring in young people, we want to bring in, what we consider opportunity youth, 18 to 24, 25. But there's a lot of things that come from people that have had life experiences that
Yeah.
um, really, really lend to the creative in some sense as well. There are certain things that I'm sure, my mom, she knows about just from living. Like she's lived, longer
Right.
than somebody who's, just getting out of school or something like that. So we had another man who went through we have a partnership, a training with the local craft union here in Louisiana, which is 478. So they cover everything from costumes, art department, grip and electric, um, I think set medics,
Mhm.
and crafty. So, and there's a few more. But one of the trainees, Tony, he used to be a firefighter, and he retired. and he was interested in set lighting, and he went through the training. He worked as a paid intern, and then as a lamp operator, and now he's a technician, like working on productions all over New Orleans. So we've had a lot of success stories with people transitioning from different professions.
That is so cool. Really proud of your mom as well. That's those transferable skills.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Did she always want to be involved in production to your knowledge, or were you surprised or no?
I wasn't surprised because when I was in elementary school, whenever we had like a school play or something like that, she was always like the volunteer parent to do,
Okay.
production. So and also too, her being a beautician, we used to go to hair shows a lot. So I think she always just enjoyed the theatrics of it all, just in
Yeah.
general. But again, even like me, she didn't know that that was an option for her, growing up. So I think that once she learned about it, she was like, okay, yeah, I could do this. And she was always very fashionable, very, just into anything that had to do with, you know, the beauty industry, fashion, all of those things. So, yeah, and it's so funny. It was like reverse nepotism, I guess, because
Right. I was thinking that.
right, I was able to help her get that first internship, and then she after that, she did her thing and made a way, for her to be able to continue with costuming. So
So she went through Novak as well, it sounds like.
we took a
Wow.
we had a costume. One of the trainings that we had through the workforce program in Baton Rouge, she took the costuming training,
Uh-huh.
and then essentially was in like the candidate pool. So even if and I don't, what? I was an intern at the time, so I wasn't the one who referred her. But
Okay.
now that I think about it, but she learned about the training program because I was an intern at Novak.
Okay.
So yeah, yep.
That's a beautiful thing. And are you able to talk to like the impact you've seen so far on black filmmakers? Because
Mhm.
I've been seeing stuff, and we know a lot of some of the same people like Jazz and I think Shanae, Simone, and some other people, and it just warms my heart. It hypes me up
Mhm.
because everyone, of course, this is
Yeah.
affecting positively everyone, especially in your community back in Baton Rouge. But can you speak to that at all?
Yeah.
Just what you've seen, the impact it's had on local black filmmakers and those abroad.
I mean, it's something that I'm just in a continuous state of awe in. Like it's not something I could I feel like I'll ever really get used to because like people finish and then they'll tag me in it and I'm just like, y'all did that. You did all of that work. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I wrote an email. Like that was it. But it's like it's and then even like with you being connected to Jazz and Simone and Shanae, it's like production world is small, but black production world is like really small.
Subatomic.
It is crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, I've definitely noticed a shift in the last 5 years or so. I'm not the only person doing this type of work. There are, executive assistants and junior execs, that at these different studios who are passionate about ushering in people that look like them into these spaces. They are uncomfortable with being the only one. I'm uncomfortable with being the only one. I don't want to be in a space where I'm the representative for Black people. Like I no.
I know, right?
So
Yeah.
and because in a way, because of that, it's just a part of their workflow, their mission, within the workspace. So whenever I'm having like a new or introductory meeting with a studio, with a network, and they want to emphasize well, we really want to, reach out to diverse communities. And I'm always like, I'm just gonna do that anyway. Like that's not, that's not something you have to
Yeah.
tell, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um Yeah, it's been beautiful to witness that shift, and to see it like in real time, where it's like, um it's so many of us kind of taking up space, um in every stage, in development, in, pre-production, in physical production, in post. I've met a couple like animators, like young up and coming Black animators that, you know yeah, so it's and when I first started out, like, it was not like this. And
Yeah.
I think like that's the goal, right? It's like, eventually my hope is like the type of programs that I manage, that they aren't needed, but right now they are still very much so needed. But but
Yeah.
yeah, that's the goal. It's like, this is something that's kind of an innate part of the hiring process, regardless, of if there's a program in place or something like that. So all I can say is that it's been very, very fulfilling and beautiful to witness, all of these connections, and seeing people working on these productions, and people starting off as PAs a year or two ago, and now they're coordinators, and they're in the union, and they're doing the hiring, and
Right.
yeah, it's great. Two of the PAs that I recruited, um, so I always say like my lane is physical production, but because I work directly with like studio executives, they're aware of the program, so they're aware of the talent pool that we have. So I've gotten requests for studio positions, and two of the PAs that had worked on productions before, they actually work on the studio level now. So whenever I'm having meetings with studio executives, they're on those meetings. So they're like
Wow.
my internal kind of people that I can reach out to directly. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is the goal. Like, this is this is the
Yes.
goal. If that, because they were able to go through this process and have this type of opportunity, that's gonna be that's gonna set the tone for them when they're in positions of power, right? When they're doing their hiring, when they're trying to figure out what systems they need to put into play. Because that's another thing too that I try to emphasize. Like, any issues that we have within the production industry when it comes to inclusion, these are systematic issues. These aren't things that one and done we're going to be able to like fix.
Hmm.
And because it was systematic, meaning that it was intentionally made this way, we have to be intentional about how we undo and unlearn these things. So I'm sorry, guys, went on a little tangent, but
No, speak on it. It's true.
so yeah, I think that even seeing that, like seeing people transition from the production space to maybe like the studio space, it's important because we need people in those positions as well. So yeah.
Love it. Two questions here. Who's your biggest supporter, and what advice would you give your younger self?
Um, so my biggest supporters are my mom and sister, without a question, without doubt.
Love it.
They like my mom. Okay, so we have a lot of common interests, so that's like always a given. But even beyond or before either of us started working in production, she was always kind of like in my corner. And then my sister um, works. She's a doctor. She works in public health, so it's very far removed from production. But if I tell my sister I recruited for this show, you should watch it, sis is watching the show, okay, and giving me notes. So
Not the notes.
yeah. Also too, like I'm a single parent, so it's like my support system in itself, I wouldn't be able to do half of the things that I do without them being able
Mm,
to help me, like whether it be childcare if I have to travel or something like that.
hmm.
um so I think if we're getting down to the nitty gritty, like even practical like support, like they're there for me. But then also whenever I'm um being acknowledged or anything like that, they're always really, really proud, and making sure that I feel affirmed and, whatever it is I'm doing. So yeah, my mom and sister are amazing. And
Great.
anybody who knows me, like, I'm gonna talk about them to anybody that will listen because they are badasses. And just excuse my French, but they're awesome.
So I love it.
And then advice to younger self. Who so many things. I would say I used to talk myself out of a lot of things, out of fear, but then also out of not meeting other people's expectations or other people's perspective of what success is.
Relatable. Yeah.
And yeah, so I feel like that, even though like we were talking about how my trajectory happened, not kind of fast, but even
Yeah.
being in that space of kind of like talking myself out of things, it delayed a lot for me because um yeah, I went to a college preparatory school, and we were taught about engineering, architecture, nursing, and law. Like that was pretty much like those are the pathways you go into, and that defines success. And I think that I really kind of internalized that. And that was another reason why I went to school for English, because I was told like people who go to school for English, they do well on the bar exam. And I was like 11 thinking about that. Like that was crazy. You know what I mean? So
Uh,
it's like so I think,
yeah.
like I said, like not talking myself out of a lot of things, I think definitely would have propelled me sooner, or I would have been aware of my potential earlier had I not did that. And I think, and that's also something that I'm like actively still learning to do. I get asked all the time, like, well, when are you moving to LA, or when are and it's like, if I'm doing the work that I want to do here in Louisiana, surrounded with my family, like,
Right.
why is that not enough for you? Like, why do I have to move to LA? You know what I mean? So it's
I do.
like, so that I have to kind of like, okay, let me reset, let me think about this. I feel like I'm doing what I'm called to do, where I'm called to do it,
Hmm.
and I'm able to do it in this space. So it shouldn't even really matter with what other people's definition of success is, whether they think I should be living in New York or LA or what have you. So that's, like I said, that's something that I'm kind of um, consistently and ongoing, like, learning to do. But I think had I done that earlier, it wouldn't be something I'm unlearning now. But yeah, I think that probably be the advice I would give my younger self.
That no, that's great advice. Like I said, that's relatable. I've been there. I've kind of had we've all gotten into other people's heads or like put them in our
Yeah.
heads and we're kind of trying to live up to their expectations of, what success and I don't know if you're familiar with Gary Vee or who or any listeners who might be familiar with him. He's a businessman and he really is kind of different and unique in that he kind of became an accidental motivational speaker and he talks
Mm,
just a lot about like you need to make sure whatever business or whatever thing you're doing, whoever you're going to marry, etc., make sure that you define success or happiness for yourself. It goes beyond, the awesome wedding or, the annual salary or
mhm.
whatever lies ahead of you, but you've got to decide, what's good
Absolutely.
enough for you. Everybody got to ask themselves that question.
Mhm.
So I think
Yeah,
that's great.
I'll
Um,
definitely be able to, his talks and all of that, because that's my type of carrying on.
yeah,
What you just
yeah.
said.
Um, what I think you'll like this one twofold. So what? Darn, how do I ask it? What makes someone who wants to do what you do
Mhm.
successful,
Mm,
and what makes a student? I hope that's the right term in your program the most successful.
mhm, mhm. So, what would make someone who wants to do like the type of work that I'm doing?
Yeah, yeah,
What For me, I think the biggest thing is intention. Um, Especially now, because there is this kind of wave of enthusiasm to work in the equity and inclusion space or the community
Okay.
engagement space. I've had several meetings, conversations, and they're like, starting off with, well, in respect to, or in reaction to the summer of 2020, we really want to, and I'm like always like, it took the summer of 2020 for y'all to, to want
Mm,
to get. So I won't get into
mm,
that, but I will say that this program has been around since 2016. So we won't go too far into that. But I think intention plays a really big part of it, because if your goal is to, meet the bottom line, get a head count, reach your quota, and you're just worried about like getting people in and that's it, and getting the recognition for it, um, then what is that even doing? Because honestly, if that is the intentionality behind it, and you're not actually like putting care into the programs, and helping people in kind of like a wraparound format or service, um, you could be putting them into positions that are making them worse off than how they started off, right? If you're bringing
yeah.
somebody in who's already marginalized, and then making them even more marginalized by bringing them in, they're the only person of color, only Black person in a department, in a crew, and you're not providing them with any resources or services to help them navigate that, you're could be causing more harm to them than you think.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I'm always it's always just about the individual at hand, the person that I'm talking to in that moment. What are their goals? What are the roadblocks, the obstacles that can prevent them to getting to those goals? What skill sets do they have that will be beneficial to a particular production, a production company, a studio, whatever? And how do we work together? Because I'm always about like, I help people help themselves, right? It's like, after you
Love
get
that.
recruited, after you after we do, a resume, revamp, a a mock interview or what have you, like we get you to that space, to the door, and you get in, at that point, hopefully, the work that we've done together, like you're at a place to where you don't need me anymore. Like
Yeah.
you've built the relationships you need to build, you've gained the experience you need to get, and now you're off into the production world, and you're good. But it's always like the individual. I'm not thinking of, oh yeah, we need to get, you know 50 people of color, 50 Black people, like within this time. Like, yes, we do need to track those things, because
Of
you have
course.
to illustrate impact to continue these type of programs. Because the studio execs, they're going to need numbers, they're going to always want numbers. Cool. But my thing is, that's not my top priority. And because my priority are the people, the numbers, they're going to come. And they have been for the past 5 or 6 years. So that's, if you're someone and you want to get into career readiness work, to community engagement work, to job placement workforce development work, just always, keep in mind that these are individuals, these are people with families, with
Lives, feelings.
lives. These are they have lives to live.
Yeah.
In production work, these are jobs. These This is a part of life. Production work isn't their life.
That's right.
uh,
Yeah.
so I think just coming into things, with a more open and understanding mind and heart is, will take people a long way, if they're wanting to get into this type of work. This is a people industry. You're working with people, um, and just kind of keeping that in mind. Um, and then what was the second question?
And then what makes a person going through the program most successful? You touched on just a little bit of it, actually.
Yeah. So for one, I'm trying to think. So I think a lot of people with the programs that I manage, there's a few aspects of it. There's the community, there's the outreach aspect of it, the recruitment process of it, but then there's the training and career readiness, and then there's job placement, right? So thinking about those three steps, right? In terms of getting in front of myself or in front of people that do the type of work that I do, the outreach aspect of it, and I'm speaking to like people anywhere. Like you always want to start where you are. And if there's some type of nonprofit, if there's some type of workforce program, if there's a film commission where you are, which most like smaller hubs, New Orleans, Miami, like all of these places, they have film commissions, which they have programs that are funded by the city, by the state, to be able to recruit and train people. So making sure that you do your own personal research on and figuring out what opportunities are where you are, the
Gotcha.
you know what I mean. So I think from there, that's the outreach part of it, to being able to get in front of recruiters and all of that. You're in, these train. If you're not going to a institution, a actual school, you want to try to get into some type of training opportunities to be able to, because if somebody's looking at your resume, you don't have production experience. Unfortunately, there are people, they won't hire you if you don't already have production experience, which is an
Right.
issue in itself. But especially for an entry level position, so it's like what. But if you don't have experience, but they see that you took the initiative to take some type of training, then that puts you a step
Right.
ahead, on the recruitment side.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the training aspect of the program, so if I recruited you and invited you to a training, all you have to do is attend that training. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
engage and
Yeah.
be engaged, right? So that's the one or two things. If you are invited and you don't come, then that tells me, and you are no show, a call and no show, then that speaks for itself. But you come to the training, there's that. And then in terms of the job placement part, so I think I want to demystify a little bit. So
Please. Yes.
I don't match people directly to shows. I I send productions and department heads recommendations for positions that they already would have been hiring for. So this is an additional head count. This isn't anything that would affect their budget because they were going to already be hiring for this position. This is an opportunity for them to get connected to new talent, because physical production work is it's who you know. By nature, if you're working on shows 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time, 9 months out of a time, like you're naturally going to work with people that maybe you've worked well with before, which that's fine. But the issue that comes with that a lot of times is that we're only hiring people that look like us. We're only hiring
Yeah.
people that have had similar life experiences as
Hmm.
us, that we went to school with, that we grew up around, that we are related to. So that is there's the issue there. But if you are so back to what I was saying. So I send candidates to productions, but they make that final hiring decision, and we do it that way for a couple of reasons. One, something that I've seen a lot of times. So like, let's say someone is looking to hire a PA for a specific position. I send them 3 candidates for that one position. They hire one, and for whatever reason, maybe this person has their personal car. Like it could be a several things, but they hire one person over the other, but they really like that other person. So they maybe bring them on as a day player, or they tell them, on my next show, I'm gonna reach out to you. And it could be another studio show production, that
Hmm.
that person is working on. But it at least gives people a chance for their resume to be reviewed, for them to, get an interview. And I've seen people get jobs on other projects from that first interview. So there's that reason. But then there's also we I I'm not in the business of like strong arming people to hire people that I'm sending them. So we want to always leave the production with that agency to choose who they want to hire. And that is a positive on both sides, because it's like nobody wants to feel like, oh, the studio is making me hire somebody, right? So there's that. But then also too, if the person knows like they only hire me because they had to for this program, it's like
Yeah.
it sets a weird or odd or uncomfortable just foundation just for the relationship already.
Yeah.
So the programs that I manage, they do not, productions do not have to participate. It's not a must hire program. It's like this is an additional resource for crew. Like that's it. So with the job placement aspect, the biggest thing for me is like for every, and I love like talking about like job placements and all of that, but I think people don't realize it's like for every person that got hired from a candidate pool that I manage, I have to tell 2, 3, 5 other people that they didn't get that job. So that's,
Right.
I don't know,
Oh.
that's tough, like
Mm.
emotionally for me, like that's tough, so one thing for people to kind of, I guess, stay encouraged or stay top of mind is like, whenever you're in between jobs, let me know. Whenever you're available, I always tell people anything that can impact where, when, or how you work, keep me posted on those things, because I can't tell you how many times somebody will say, "Oh, I'm available for work right now." The show I was on just wrapped, and I literally just got a request from a show in the same day. So keeping those lines of communication open and active is really, really important, and it's how you stay top of mind for opportunities. So those are the three things that I think make people successful: doing what they need to do to get connected to training opportunities to be able to even get recruited, coming to the training, being engaged in the training, and then keeping open lines of communication in that kind of job placement period. Also too, it takes some patience sometimes. One of the young men, Devon Edwards, um, I recruited him initially, I think, this might have been 2017 or 18 or something like that. He took the training, and I sent him to for as a recommendation for maybe 6 different shows before he finally got placed. And it was for a number of reasons. Like one show pulled out. They were like, we don't need another PA. It was like, it wasn't anything on his end like that made
Right.
him like
Right.
not employable or anything like that. It was a number of things.
These things are.
And then it just happened, right? So he finally got hired on Westworld, and then immediately after that, he went to Tacoma FD, and then he went to All American, and then so these were all Warner Media at the time, Warner Media shows like back to back. And the second two, I didn't refer him. He, from connections that he made on the first show that he worked on, he was able to continue to work for the rest of that year. And then I had gotten a call from a friend of mine who was the production supervisor on Grey's Anatomy, and they were looking for, this was when productions were first starting to pick up after the shutdown. So they were looking to build a COVID compliance team. So
Yeah.
I referred him, even though this was a favor of a friend, like this wasn't a program or anything like that. But I was like, I know people looking for work, so I'm a, refer him. So they ended up hiring Devon. He immediately went from PA to coordinator to supervisor, and then he got hired by the studio. So, but it was because of like, yes, he got hired by the
Love to
studio.
see it.
So he got hired by yeah. So, and this was like in a 6-month span. So, um, yeah. So we stayed in communication. Also, Devon was like, I love people that like, especially during like the interview recruitment process, anybody who's like willing to like connect me to their peers, like to me, that's just like
Yes.
that's
Yes.
that's gonna make you stand out. So that was one thing that he did very early on. He was like, this has been such a great opportunity for me. I want to connect you to this person. I want to connect you to this person. And 2 or 3 of those people that he connected me to, this is so crazy. One of them, Kiara Bourne, she ended up being a director's assistant for The Outsider in Atlanta. Another
Wow.
one, Brianna, this woman, Brianna worked on Ballers, then Perry Mason, then Euphoria. Then I specifically, when I heard that All American was getting a spinoff, All American Homecoming, centered
Yes.
around historically Black college students, I pitched to my who I work with Warner Media that we exclusively recruit people that went to historically black colleges. So she went to Howard, so I
Mm.
connected her to the production supervisor, and they ended up hiring her as the assistant production coordinator. So she's in the union now from that show,
You got
and
credits.
she got credits. Do you hear me?
That's
Okay,
amazing.
so yeah, so and those were two people that Devon connected me to. So yeah, anybody that's trying to put their people on, like that's something that's gonna always like stand out to me as well. Whenever I'm recruiting or trying to get people placed on shows.
That's awesome. And I just thought of something. Do again, this is all about those coming through the program. Do you have to be based in Baton Rouge? Is there also online training?
Gotcha. So for the Louisiana programming or like Novak training,
Or right?
it de- it
Okay.
depends. So like it depends on the fund, and we can go back into like the structure
Oh,
of like
gotcha.
how
Okay.
nonprofit work goes. But so if the funding is specifically for um Baton Rouge based, residents, then they would have to be based in Baton Rouge. We try to get as much like state funding that way we can
Yeah.
have candidates. So if we do have virtual trainings, which we had a lot of, during the peak of COVID,
Right. Right.
they
Right.
just would need to be Louisiana resident. For the national program, um, the way that works is, we base our recruitment cycles on the preliminary like production reports that we get. So if they're telling us that there'll be 10 shows in Atlanta, 20 shows in LA or something like that, and then we'll find out like there are some shows like in the Carolinas, in Florida, so we'll base our recruitment and outreach to other nonprofits based off of that, so that we're not over indexing. We don't want to train 15 people in North Carolina and it's really only one show is going to be out there a year, and then it's not even a guaranteed position.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we try to kind of balance it out. So we've had people maybe go through a training in January, and for a number of reasons maybe they don't even get placed in that year, but they might get placed the next year. um so it's a bit of a dance, and yeah, we this year we worked with a show, and I had a show assignment in Kyle, Texas, which was fun. I had a show assignment in Miami, in Puerto Rico. I always have show assignments in New York, Atlanta, and LA, of course. And then we had some, of course, programming here in Louisiana. So yeah, I mean, I can't stress it enough, like no matter where you are, like try to see if there's some type of media based training, or if there's a film commission office in your city, because they
Gotcha.
typically, it's beneficial for productions that are filming in these different cities to be able to hire locally, like on a budget standpoint, like if they have to hire PAs from out of state and cover per diems and all of that, like that's a hit to the budget. So
Yeah.
they want to try to hire locally as much as they can. Also, too, if you live in a state that has a film tax credit incentive,
Yeah.
they have to hire locally. So I think it's even important, that to know that information. Not even to get too much into the business side of it, but it is
Mhm.
important to know the business side, and to
Yeah.
understand those type of things that could be beneficial to you. So that's something too that I always try to advise, my mentees, or, people who are looking for advice about, working in production, is you also want to understand those structures as well, to see what could be, of benefit to you.
Thank you, because this all goes. We highlighted you and the awesome work you are doing with Novak and that Novak is doing, but this also shed light on. You used two terms: film commissions and office. And what was the other one?
Like workforce development, maybe.
Yeah, this
Yeah. So
is this is all, and like you said, check if you have these resources in your city, in your state, things like that, because everyone's going to do it differently than Louisiana or than whatever. But it's a good place to start. It, like it
absolutely.
because this is just one huge, at least to me, networking episode, just the level of things you were talking about. I've learned so much. um, I thought it was all on me. Like my journey was different, you know, coming from Maryland and then moving to LA, being there for a few years. And you know, I did do a film program when I was in Maryland, and I just
Mhm.
thought it was just, you know, get people's numbers and things, and that worked and it was fine. But it's like I'd never taken any boot camps or anything like that, and we didn't have programs like this at my film program. I don't know how many film schools have programs like
Mhm.
this,
Mhm.
or classes like this to kind of demystify these things. But this has been invaluable in information. I'm like, where would we be without Novak or these programs if you're not in Louisiana?
Yeah. And I just want to say too that there are organizations, like I said, like Novak across the country that are doing this type of work. And I feel like nonprofits don't get the love that they deserve sometimes,
No,
but
they don't.
but in LA and all of these other places, there are nonprofits that are doing this type of work. And also too, something that I'm starting to see are not I don't want to call it a trend, but something that I'm starting to see is studios investing in training. So let's say you'll get a studio that partners with a nonprofit that already has like a training function. The studio will fund a training in partnership with the nonprofit, and then
Mhm.
in turn they'll want to funnel in the trainees to the productions that come to that city. So that's that's a training model that I'm starting to see more and more of. I hope that other nonprofits and other studios start to implement that, because I think that that's something um, that could be successful in making sure that productions are retaining new talent. Because yeah, we had gotten to a space like which was very rare. Like productions were having to go off roster even in LA. So like that's the biggest crew base in the country. But because it was so many productions at one point, it was like a deficit for crew like everywhere. So it's like, well, clearly there needs to be more training and more pipelines if even in, one of the biggest production hubs, they're having issues sourcing talent. Um, so yeah, I'm starting to see a lot more of that. Um, yeah, and also too that the thing of like again starting where you are, um location plays a big part in people's
Yeah, yeah,
well, the reality of it is it does play a big part in like people's barriers into this industry, but then also too a lot of it is people's own kind of limitations that they put on themselves. Well, I don't live in California, so I can't do this. No, you can. You can. Like they literally may be already filming something or about to film something in your city, and typically the film commission offices they'll publicize if it's public knowledge, if it's not like this secret or closed set situation. They'll publicize what productions are about to be filming in the city, and they'll likely list like a general resume intake, email. So that's how a lot of people are able to get, their first production job sometimes. So again, just make sure that you are, taking advantage of the resources that are around you before you count yourself out because you don't live in LA.
that is great advice. Stevie, this has been epic. You really have just demystified a lot. There's a part of me that's like, I wonder if we only scratched the surface of what you know in that world and just how it can benefit crews and talent and vice versa. So we're gonna have to have you back in the future. Speaking
Gladly.
Thank you. Speaking of that, also, at the time of recording this, it is the 50th anniversary of Novik. Did I hear you say that?
Yes, yes.
So, at the time of recording this, ladies and gentlemen, is the 50th anniversary. When this comes out, that would have passed. So, I hope that all those who listened had a great time, participated, whatever Stevie knows. But I wanted to put that out so that people who heard this when it comes out are not like, oh, I can, I just didn't want to set y'all up like
Yes,
that.
yeah.
But Novak is still fire. I just, just a little housekeeping just then. I just wanted to make sure y'all were well informed because this has been great information. Um, just a couple more things, Stevie. What's your favorite? Why do you love cinema and production so much? And then where can people learn more about Novak and follow you?
Gotcha. I love cinema and television because it is a connecting point for people. I can't people I've never met before. It's a conversation starter. My family members, my friends, we can collectively talk about, things that we've watched that resonated with us, that, really like open our minds. Film is supplemental education for a lot of people, myself including. Like something I didn't learn in school, I probably can learn from watching a film, that's scripted and unscripted documentaries and all of that. And I forgot to mention my actual background in production is more so on the documentary side, but
Okay,
um
I didn't know that.
yeah. um but yeah, it's so many things, and it's just fun. It's good hearted fun to just
Yes, it is.
watch a movie, watch a television series, and to sit in that world, and yeah, and just enjoy that. So I love it so much. I really do. I like selfishly, I'm like, I gotta keep getting people hired so they can keep making keep making these TV
That'd be me. If I was you, that'd be me too. Yeah, all that self
Like,
interest. Like, I need
listen,
more
I'm like,
fire movies.
listen, I'm like on the trades, like, oh, did the show get picked up? Okay, cool. You gotta keep getting people hired. Like, yes.
I love that, man. That's great. Cool.
And then, so Novak. So we are novacvideo.org, NOVAC video.org. We're Novak Video on Instagram, Novak Video on Twitter, and Novak on Facebook. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you're in Louisiana and you're listening to this and you're interested in production, at the very least, like subscribe to our newsletter because that's how
Do it.
you can be kept up to date on training opportunities, on networking opportunities, on job opportunities. Like at the very least, subscribe to our newsletter. If you're anywhere else, look into other like nonprofit training opportunities where you are and see if they have partnerships with the studio because that could be your way in. There are similar programs like the one that I manage with other studios. So they're,
Yeah.
having all of these things implemented. Myself personally, I am Stevee-Rayne, government name on everything. Um, I've
Yeah.
Stevee-Rayne on Netflix. I'm not Netflix. I'm Stevee-Rayne on Instagram and Twitter, and it's STEVEERAYNE. So like the city in Louisiana, RAYNE. And yeah, that's how you can find me.
Awesome. This has been Ooh, this has been great. Thank you again so much. I've just learned a lot, got a lot of wheels turning. I hope all of you who are listening, if you think like, I think that's the track I've been trying to get on, Stevie's track of just development, recruitment, um, merging the nonprofit with the film and studios and trying to place people and create opportunities for people. I hope this episode like got the wheels turning, got the ideas going, for you to like really get even more embedded in your own community and see how you can do it. Again, like she said, those who are in Louisiana, who are there locally, and you're listening to this, and this sounds like something you'd want to learn more about, look into them. I'll put all of the information in the show notes as well, and absolutely follow Stevie. Like she said earlier, she from time to time puts out really awesome engagement, like that cool game she did of just like, what are your past skills? And maybe there's an accompanying skill on a film set, or in a film office and other ways to just get the ideas flowing. You guys should keep up with her as well. So, Stevie, thanks again for being a part of this, for sitting down to talk to me. This has been great.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's really been a treat and a highlight of my day for sure. Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
I'm
And
glad.
opening this space for, creatives and people who work in the industry to talk about it, like, because it's, yeah, this really
Wow.
was, a treat, like I said.
That's awesome thing. Just got my ideas going. God willing, if I can play a role. Some of this is here on the continent of Africa, but I think
Yeah.
there's even more. Like I think little things like this can even contribute to the cinematic space here as
Absolutely. And
well.
we can talk offline because I know a program in Africa, coincidentally. So
What?
yes, I
Okay.
know of. Yeah, it's spearheaded by Christian Epps. He's a gaffer in the industry,
Okay.
but yeah, he has a program in Africa.
We will talk, and then for all of those who are here on the continent with me, I will share that information. That'll be TBD for because I'm
Yes.
thinking of you guys as well because this I'm just so blessed to be here, and I'm just trying to, as y'all know, I'm just trying to unite everybody. I'm
Yes.
trying to unite the tribe and just black folk from the West, from the States, from the UK here on the continent. It's just man, just trying to be a blessing in this space. And Stevie, you've definitely been one here on this episode, so thank you. And guys,
Thank
if
you.
you're welcome. Guys, if you like this and you want to hear more, stay tuned. I got more episodes coming your way very soon. Talk to you next time. Peace out.